This is being streamed on the internet. So I guess we will go around and introduce ourselves.
I'm Stefan Wunsch, co-chair of the committee.
Manager is public member.
Robert Guthrie, manager of service planning. My name is Andy Reeker. I'm with CTPS.
Wick Seymour, public member from Somerville.
Karen Mosick, public member.
Arkady Goldman-Sorlov, co-chair of the Rock.
Craig Doskowski, public member.
Very good. Nice haircut. We will have our traditional opening public comment period if anybody has any public comments. We will also have a public comment period at the end.
I'll make a public comment on behalf of Ronnie Wheeler, a former member of the Rock, and I guess she is very frustrated with Keolis being in customer service, and Keolis in general. She says that customer service had improved maybe for a year or two after Keolis came on board, but now she says it's gone from being bad to non-existent, and she was able to forward me unanswered emails, and also I guess she had been in contact with Linda, who had then contacted a person in customer support, and they didn't get back to her, and also apparently trains are just not being cleaned anymore, or just not being cleaned to her expectations, and so she's just very frustrated, because she just feels that she can't get any kind of response. So I offered to contact Rose Yates, who's now in charge of customer service there, and so we'll see if we can maybe get her to come to operations meeting, because that way it's a little less threatening, for lack of a better phrase. That's not the best word. We can control the agenda for a lot longer and go into more detail about things. So we'll see if we can get it forward to next month's meeting. And I've been in touch with Brad, and so he's kind of on board with that. And we'll get it for later. And so that's it.
So I could make a public comment if it's okay. About this time of year, between late August and early October, every year I go to International Society of Environmental Epidemiology meetings, which move around the world. And this year the meeting was in Sydney, so I was there for about 10 days. Got a transit card right away, worked phenomenally well, great electric heavy rail system, great bus system, tap on, tap off. Same thing for ferries, great ferry system in Sydney. Also spent a couple days in Christchurch, which is a smaller city. Went there to see how they're rebuilding from the 2011 earthquake. And they have a really good, really nice bus system. It's not a big enough city to have a heavy subway system, but they have a really nice bus system. Their ferry systems work quite as good. So if anybody ever wants to chat about that, let me know. Thank you.
Do you feel like giving the presentations?
Yeah, I have a lot of pictures. You know, I've taken the transit everywhere I've gone except for Mexico City. A little worried about not understanding the language, but including in Brazil. You know, when I was in Sao Paulo, the transit was phenomenal.
You know, maybe with an emphasis on lessons learned that we could.
Yeah, and I could, you know, do it really small sometime. Maybe do 15 minutes on this year or something like that. Sure.
I'm just picturing you walking around Sydney or around Australia. Where you're like, ooh, look, a koala bear. And you're like, ooh, look, an electrified heavy rail train. Everybody's taking pictures this way, and you're looking the other way.
And even I got my card at the airport, so I just, I didn't take it. I took one cab for an unusual reason, but even from the airport to where I was staying, it was phenomenal. Good. Legible, quick to learn, really simple system across the board, and very heavily used.
How's the automobile traffic? Did you notice it at all?
I wasn't in places where there were like highways and arterials, so I would say Christchurch it was like here, but less so. The emissions are a little higher per vehicle on the road than in the U.S. I think that's probably because of higher diesel component. But
you smell the cars.
Yeah, you could smell the emissions a little
Yeah.
bit more.
Yeah.
But they were both great systems for the size of the cities. I think they're struggling with capital costs like everybody else on future proposed investments. But at this point in time, I have to say they really work well.
Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. The minutes were sent out to the mailing list. So we have a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes? Anyone opposed? Abstentions? Okay, passed with one abstention. And next are the subcommittee reports. Capital and Finance Subcommittee first, I guess.
Sure. So, surprisingly, the meeting went on for a little while, but I won't have that much to report because most of it was talking about the slide decks there were like 3 sets of FNCDPs, and we sort of just went through them, and a lot of them, of course, are operation related, but they're nonetheless interesting to the group. And the one thing I will point out that was interesting, a particular interest came from the slide deck on Focus 40, at least to me, was an exploration in thinking kind of in Focus 40 is kind of like doing this thing where they are, trying to have one element that kind of thinks outside the box. And one idea they had was to combine Park Street and Downtown Crossing. And I was intrigued by that because I hadn't heard that idea. It's probably it'll be interesting to see if it gets into the final report. But I just bring it up because if you didn't read the decade, you hadn't heard about that. Just something that's kind of out there as a possible thought.
The interesting thing is, and apologies, I didn't see it in the report. This is the first I'm hearing of it. Is simply a paper change, so that station looks like one station on the
I think the idea is to physically
or is there a physical
build
change?
platforms under Winter Street so that there is only one station rather than 2 that are super close together, which limits the capacity of the line.
But there was no description in the slide deck whatsoever.
That would be a pricey.
Yes.
My guess is what that turns into. How I would do it, I guess. I would shut down the red line, one of the 2 red line platforms, and then magically I did it without and rename the station. And then I declare victory and move on. And it cost me $10,000 to put up a partition wall on the areas where I don't have to, and maybe I have to move around a couple of fairways. So it's going to be $1 million project, but it's not. I don't think it's putting a brand new state-of-the-art platform for the red line in between the 2. It would be you simply shut down one and you make people walk through a tunnel more.
Well,
You're that's what they would do, right?
That would be the cheap way to do it.
Yes. And because you're going to do that, or you're going to tear the whole thing down? You're going to tear down historical buildings and put up a $300 million 8-story glass atrium head house, and I don't think they're doing that in this case because they don't have the land to do it. So your only alternative is to shut one down, which is.
you can always build an underground cathedral. Well, I mean, we could discuss this further in whatever group. I mean, we can certainly talk about it more in operations. I mean, like I said, it's just was something that was in the Focus 40 as adventurous idea. Having a good hard time coming up with best adjectives for it, but it wasn't something that they were like, this is something that we definitely see as something we can do next. It's more like if you want to think outside the box in terms of how to increase capacity and make the red line work better, that would be an idea. So let's bring back my notes.
stations does that does increase throughput, right?
Certainly not that.
We could just put we could just put 2 stops in the red line, Alewife and Braintree. It'd be super fast.
It'd be much faster.
And, well, maybe this may strain.
I wonder what the passenger count would be.
What's that?
I wonder what the passenger count would be. The only one people going from Gatwick to Braintree or.
Doesn't matter, if you increase throughput.
Other than that,
I don't think the platforms any station can handle, but I'm getting obsessed with Civic. Keep going.
well, go ahead. I mean, I don't have much more to say. It's good. So, go ahead.
No, I think the challenge there about just shutting 1 or 2 platforms down is those platforms are really crowded. Like they're not deep platforms. You don't have a lot. You don't have a lot of room between the tracks and the wall, at either downtown crossing or Front Street.
Well, and the transfer passageways are also not very wide and are already full, which I think
Or
is
tall or up to code development. That's
part of the motivation for wiping all that out and building a new station, if they have infinite money.
right.
The problem is that Winter Street is also relatively narrow, so you have to build under existing buildings. And the tunnel also has a couple of curves in it on the way, which also complicates matters.
Well, I'm not hashing out the idea. I mean, I have thoughts about it, but my role here now is just to present what we said in the meeting. If people want to discuss it more now, since we have time, that's fine. But, that's the only reason I'm not engaging. Right. Let's see. So.
I very good. I keep poking you.
Huh?
I keep poking you.
Oh yeah.
You didn't even get a smile on you.
Oh, no problem. That extreme example was just red meat. But you know what? I go after it only so many times before I realize why bother. Let's see. We talked about my conversation with Paul Regan, and he gave me some good follow-up suggestions on how to follow up on the PAGO issue. So I am in the process of pursuing that. I'll report on the follow-up on the design construction delivery process when we talk about the RTAC meeting that I attended. And we also have decided, the committee decided to change its meeting date from this first Thursday of the month to the third Thursday of the month, mainly to accommodate Brian. That will be the case for every Thursday next year, except for December, in which case it will come back to the first Thursday of the month, because the third Thursday of the month will be after the full rugby. We're getting kind of close to Christmas, so just kind of figured forward in a couple of weeks. But we can, that's an issue later on that year, will become apparent.
Do we have to change any dates that we forward that for this year?
No, because it'll take effect next year. So that's it. That's it for me.
Marketing, communications, and operations committee.
That technically is me, but I was not there this month. They been there?
Yeah, we were there. So I'm trying to remember. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay. I had to leave early. I was only there till about 6:20.
Yes, we talked about the bus system and the upcoming reconstruction of the Harvard busway tunnel, which will result in the closure of one of the 2 tunnels, first the one, then the other, for a total of something like 6 to 8 months. And the resulting service changes around the Harvard Square area because of that. So the trolley buses will be looping before getting to the tunnel and then using Huron Avenue 72 to access the garage then everything else will be running through the tunnel one way and on the surface the other way. So that's coming up.
Is it the case that the trackless trolley routes are going to be the most significantly affected, and the other ones are just marginally, or is everything going to be getting a hit?
Everything's affected in some way because there's a lot of ridership through that tunnel. But 71, 73, and 77 are just the busiest routes. So between the regular bus 77 trackless. But it's going to be less convenient transfer to the red line for trackless riders, since they will have to walk at least a block above ground before going into the tunnel, and actually a fairly considerable distance
Right.
to get to the red line.
Will they have to walk above ground from both the north side routes and the south side? In other words,
I don't think the north side routes will be running as trackless.
oh,
The one-
okay.
The 72 is the one that's currently not running. Not clear when
Okay.
it will be back to electric operation. Actually, unrelated to that meeting, but I did a quick experiment looking at the next bus rail time map to see if it would actually be faster for the 71 and 73 to go via Huron Avenue. And it looks like it takes about the same time, maybe slightly faster, to go via Huron versus sitting in the traffic jam to cross Fresh Pond at Mount Auburn for 10 minutes.
Interesting.
But that's only like at the height of the worst traffic jam.
So then, not at,
No, this is the bus tunnel. Yeah, this is the bus tunnel. The bus tunnel is in pretty bad shape. Like anytime there's heavy rain, there will be trash barrels to collect the water drips that you see in the east, that sort of thing. Pretty bad shape. Anytime there's heavy rain.
so then during periods, you said it's a little faster during peak rush hour.
Yeah.
During non-peak rush hour, what's the?
Well, during peak rush hour, there is literally stop traffic that you have to wait in for 10 minutes to cross to get through that light.
I understand that. I was asking though, what's the difference during non-peak rush hour?
There's no traffic jam.
So then it would work better.
So then you just go straight down. Rather than,
Well, I was just wondering if the improvement performance was also better in a non.
no, because it's a longer distance.
Okay. But it could be, even if it's the only difference, it could be faster because of what other factors, but that's not the case. Did you look at that?
I'm 99% sure that it's not.
Okay, fine.
Is the big holdup for the trackless trolleys crossing Fresh Pond Parkway, is that because the cars on, that's Route 2, right? Is that because the cars are blocking the intersection, or it's just because there's so much
No,
volume
it's
coming
just-
off of Mount
there's
Auburn?
There's just a huge queue of cars coming up Mount Auburn.
Okay, so it's traffic on Mount Auburn that really can't be alleviated by any kind of like signal prioritization of that intersection?
There exists a plan to build a bus lane, to paint a bus lane on that section of Mount Auburn. There was a grand planning process by the DCR for that whole area. They came up with a plan. They don't have funding for improvements, but bus lanes also don't cost very much. A, but B, Mount Auburn Street belongs to the city of Cambridge, so it's up to them to paint that bus lane.
Do you think that we would have any say in making a recommendation that that be done before the tunnel construction begins?
I think that would be a good idea, actually. I think it would be a good idea for The Rock to write a letter to the city of Cambridge.
All right, and we can do that, and I can also talk with Tegan. I forget her last name. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You know, because she's like the chair of RTAC now, so, and just find out from her what her thinking about that is, and then we can write a letter in conjunction. If she says that, if she can say it's no go for these reasons, or solid reasons, then I can bring that back and decide what to do with that.
Yeah, I think
Would
it
it,
was,
would it be a temporary solution just through the life of construction?
no, I think the bus lane is meant to be a permanent solution to this problem of sitting in stop traffic for 10 minutes on a route that normally takes 20.
I guess my only concern is that we don't have a very good history of any bus lanes in this town. They work well for about 3 months while their paint is fresh. There's a difference between a painting lane and having a segregated lane with some kind of curve or
That's also a good point.
But also, this is the city of Boston, this is Cambridge, and Cambridge is much more proactive about bus lanes, bicycle paths, they would wear.
and there is the enforcement aspect
Yeah.
of it. But I mean, to get to this meeting every month, I walk down Essex Street, which is Boylston,
Right, right.
down the Silver Line bus, and that paint project cost $1 million, and the paint is worn away, and cars driving that lane.
But that's the city of Boston. I think there's a difference, even though I love Boston, that's not,
Yeah, I mean,
we're not,
Do you think it's the city of Boston is bad at enforcement, or do you
Yes,
think the
yes.
individuals who live on this side of the Charles River are
City
have a
of Boston
proclivity
is
are
bad.
horse drivers?
no, I think the city of
Bad
Boston
at
is
paint.
for enforcement. They don't enforce for the most part, cars parked in less things. I don't know about Cambridge, but,
I don't believe Cambridge has any bus lanes at the moment.
no, but the bus stops, you know, you get a $100 fine, and I have not seen anybody get a ticket for parking in a bus stop in Boston.
am I correct that the border between Cambridge and Watertown is right around the cemetery?
It's further down, so it's right, it's a little bit past where the 71 and 73 split.
Okay.
So
it's further back
actually
than I thought.
Entirely city of Cambridge. There's a separate project in Watertown to completely redo the Watertown section of Mount Auburn, which is an ongoing design process, and it's going to be a few years before they can start construction on that.
Okay. I actually wasn't thinking even in terms of the border affecting the responsibility as much as the border between Cambridge and Watertown affecting the ridership and whose constituents they are. It sounds like if even the border is somewhere in the area of where that split is, 71, 73, probably there's not a lot of riders that live in Cambridge that are taking that route. So there's not a lot of pressure that those riders could put on the Cambridge City Council to enforce that bus lane, even if it was produced, right? You see what I mean? It's sort of like, it seems like it'd be more of the Watertown riders who really don't have a say in how Cambridge enforces their traffic laws.
That's certainly true. Of course, many of those people on that bus work in Cambridge, so in some sense, they're still
Right.
into
That's true.
keeping Cambridge's property taxes among the lowest in the state.
So where do you want this bus lane again? Just making a note.
Mount Auburn Street, like between Aberdeen and Freshman Parkway.
Great, thank you.
It's part of the Mount Auburn, or part of the Fresh Pond Corridor project.
Would you recommend on both sides of Fresh Pond Parkway?
There's a plan produced by the DCR consultants that actually lays out in great detail. They've done all the traffic studies. They have a whole completed plan. They just need the money and or will to actually execute it. For the DCR, for the Fresh Pond Parkway itself, they actually propose some reconfiguration of the roads and the intersections and all of that, which is going to take some amount of money, which they don't have at the moment, being the DCR. And that's also their sort of territory. Whereas Mount Auburn Street is City of Cambridge, and painting bus lanes is not expensive compared to various other things that they can do relatively easily.
Well, kind of a tangent. I mean, so if someone else wants to talk about this, I'll hold off my question. Okay. Has anyone read the Arsenal Street Corridor project? I've been meaning to read it, and so, anything new or interesting?
Well, I focused on the call to put for a new route to go from Moortown area to Boston Landing. I mean, that would be part of what we looked like as part of the service plan.
Right.
That was an idea there. I mean, it's certainly from a service planning perspective, some validity. I don't know. I'm not prepared. I haven't researched enough to be able to speak whether I would support it or not. But, you know, the other thing for transit is transit signal priority for the Route 70, which I believe was in there, if I remember correctly. So definitely be very supportive of that. Some stop consolidation, I believe they call for. So some good things in there for transit.
So any thoughts about splitting that route or doing something that only went to the Arsenal Mall area?
We've definitely heard and considered, we've been thinking about that, and that would be a service plan type of idea.
It's certainly been thought about for years. Actually, still on the note of Watertown. Watertown has a lot of these transportation projects, which is part of why Mount Auburn Street is going to take a long time. One of the other ones is they want to reconfigure Watertown Square, which will also have some implications for bus operations since there are buses that run through there. This also creates an opportunity to add a new bus stop on the inbound number 70, because there's been a lot of discussion about how the inbound stop is kind of far from the square itself, but putting it closer to the square is convenient for operations, and the city doesn't want it. But with the reconfiguration, we could put a stop. We can actually just put a stop on the far side, on the, I guess, Arsenal, whichever street it's technically called, which will make for a fairly easy transfer to the 71 across one crosswalk, to the 57 across the bridge. So
we've looked at origin destination transfer information, and I looked at the end of the day, it was something like a third of riders transferring, alighting at that stop in Watertown Yard at the 70, were going to Watertown Yard and transferring to the bus route in Watertown Yard, which is pretty substantial.
Yeah.
So making that a more convenient connection would certainly be a good idea.
So, seeing as I live in Watertown, I'll try to keep an eye on the process.
Please, yeah.
So one tiny thing, I don't use the buses at Harvard Square that often, but I sometimes do not see good signage helping people get to routes. I know the daily riders know exactly where they're going.
No, I think you could argue that wayfaring, where does the word? Wayfinding, wayfaring being fine furniture. Wayfinding is never been a priority.
But I assume when they reconfigure to work on these ramps, they're gonna have to have new signage.
That's
Maybe when they put it back together, they can think about it a little bit, because, I would use buses more frequently, even though I don't use them very often, if I knew where the heck the stops were.
one of the other things in as part of this plan is apparently so northbound buses will be going through the tunnel, either the normal tunnel or the lower busway where the upper is closed.
Yeah.
Southbound will be going on the street, but they'll actually be stopping close to the actual center of Harvard Square.
Yeah.
Apparently there's a space there where they can stop.
Yeah.
I think it's probably worth looking at whether other the regular 66 and 86 should stop there as well. Because currently the stops are kind of far away from A, the subway, and B, all the other bus stops.
I didn't want to be argumentative, but I do want to say I think the T, I disagree. I think the T does do a good job with wayfinding, but only when they have the money to do so, which usually means only when a station goes under significant reconstruction. I mean, I think that the government center signage and for lack of a better word, wayfinding is actually quite good. I mean, it's the newest, I think, in the system, but they did a good job there.
They seem to be averse of using cardboard signs or anything. It has to be perfect or they don't do it at all. I go to an old folks program at UMass bus stop 8 stops there, and bus 41 stops at JFK. There is no sign for the 41, so you have to ask somebody, where does the 41 stop? You ask another passenger, because there's nobody there. And at UMass, there's no reason there can't be a cardboard sign, even though that, things get moved around at UMass all the time because of construction. So I disagree. My thing to the T is, the perfect is the enemy of the good. Put up something, even if it's just a little thing with a magic marker on it. Just don't wait until you have everything.
Sir, I'll say to you
Yeah.
that when the T spends $200 million on a head house, they put some nice signs.
Point taken.
But with that said, I think they haven't. I'd be interested to see if they, and once again, it's spending money, but that's the challenge, right? Yep. This feels like an opportunity that there's two different problems, right? There's I think the biggest problem in my mind would be the handful of subway stations that have you have two different routes. You know, like that's your kind of big, like how do I get from the red to green to red?
Or red to blue, for crying out loud.
Right,
how do you do that?
Right. It's a real tricky one. There's that.
You bring it in.
I feel like there's an opportunity here. It's not in the T's. It's an area that they haven't had to because they don't have 100 of these scenarios. Like when you're in New York City, you have 1,000 of these. You only have a handful of stations where you have this kind of problem, if you will. I feel like there's an opportunity here for a fairly low-cost external consultant who knows the space, just like how they came up with the new yellow signs that we like for the announcing there's a service change. Like, I feel like there's an opportunity for a study to be done to say, let's look at these core stations and let's make some recommendations around wayfaring, and then the T can choose whether or not it wants to spend the money to do those, but kind of look at that.
Well, it's been done. I mean, we've talked to a woman who's done them, and so the research has been done. It's just that when it came time to spend the money, it wasn't there. And so the work's been done, and what you're asking to be done has been done. And it's just that the T decided not to.
I know they looked at it briefly, but I'd be interested to see how comprehensively, or if they were just kind of one pilot station they were doing, and what expertise they bring to it. That felt like that was an internal study, but the T was kind of like.
Well, I didn't bring in an external person, but I don't think you always need to bring in someone from outside.
No, they did actually.
Evaluation with, huh?
Sorry to interrupt. They did actually. Margie, yeah, in fact, Margie Lackner and that person came to a public rock meeting and presented. I can't remember the name of the company, but I have it in my notes for what it's worth.
So then even more power to the argument that it's been done.
Yeah, and
dust that off and see if there's any recommendations.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, it's been, I think, 2 years since we last talked to Margie Lackner. Yeah, probably it's even longer. Yeah, my recollection is that the design manual for station wayfinding was like an inch thick and covered the majority of the key downtown stations. But really, they only had the implementation money for, like I said, for new stations like Government Center. That's why Government Center is all uniform.
Yeah, that's the other problem with wayfinding is that it's not very consistent between different parts of the system.
Right.
Yep.
Well,
Look at Alewife.
Or maybe every rock member, especially we get new rock members, get big cardboard signs for their favorite station.
And I think I want sometime, but then I see visitors, never been to Boston before.
I'm just hyper exposed to it because I go to South Station every day.
Yeah.
And the number of times, once a week, I stop somebody looking aimlessly going, with a suitcase going, several lines that direction, don't go that way, you'll end up in Cambridge. You know, like it's a, once a week, the panic of, oh God, I just got on the subway, but I don't really want to go through those gates because I'm trying to get Amtrak. But I know if I go through those gates, I can't go back through the gates. I'm afraid to go through the gates. So I'm going to stay here just to panic.
And you can imagine if you don't speak English, then the problem is multiplied.
Yeah, it's funny that we mentioned talk about wayfinding tonight because just I think within the last week on Railroad.net, somebody revisited a topic, a discussion about signage and pointed out that there's signs at Park Street that are still up unchanged from when Government Center was closed during the reconstruction. So there's still signs that make you think that you've got to, go to Haymarket to get to the airport, for example.
So where are those? I don't pay much attention. Where are the signs?
Where in Park Street? I don't remember exactly, but the post on railroad.net was pretty specific, and there was even a picture of something that was pretty egregious. I'll put that to the mailing list.
I was just kind of curious.
Mm-hmm.
Not curious enough probably to read the email.
Okay.
Other people probably will.
That's fair. No, you should say that. That's.
I love the honesty though. That's good.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
It's just that if no one else so it's just good.
Yeah.
Well, you wonder if there could not be a more efficient feedback loop on where people were trying to figure out something and couldn't, and they could just like send that in.
And what would happen?
Well, I don't know what would happen, but
It would
I
go
would think the
fire.
customer input would be pretty efficient. I mean, in some cases it would just be someone like me who didn't see an obvious thing, but in other cases, probably you would see where the gaps are from the people not being able to find those connections.
I would say.
I had compared, when I'm on a server, every couple of months, and I always put things in, they at the end of their comments.
It makes me think
If
though.
you submit go to the MBTA.com and submit a comment or complaint, say, I was standing at such and such a station, and I
Right.
can see people who didn't understand how to get.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that will come in if you request a response. There should be a response that comes back to you saying, we are investigating it, or whatever the method is. And I mean, from a bus, I handle bus stops. Our shop handles bus stops. So whenever a bus stop sign goes down, we get that, and we're submitting those to the sign shop, and sometimes it takes a while to the wheels move and get that sign up there and manufacture it and everything, but there is a process. And my understanding, at least for bus stop signs, is it should happen.
I think there's a difference between missing signs, and it's a great process for that, and just wait. Get once you, and I don't know the answer on it. Once you get out of the station, how do you point someone to where the bus picks you up? How do you other than just knowing that you go up and I got to turn around the corner, I got to go up. I pop up out of the station, I got to turn, I got to go a block around the left, and I know the 71 gets off.
Seems like something that an app could really help with that. They take a fair amount of work to do it, but it's not the sort of thing. You might have to update it, things change a bit, but I mean, it just seems like it's really rich territory for.
No, you're right, because there's certain things that you just never change. I've gotten to stop once going up my South Station example. I would love to submit to the thing, but yes, people are very confused by the fact that when I get off at South Station to get to this silver line, I have to exit the fare gates, go upstairs, go up an escalator, cross the street, go outside, and go wait for a bus. My suggestion to MBTA is that you sync the bus station, the so-called silver line, in the fare gate area of South Station. But they're going to say, we're investigating your complaint. Thank you so much for your comment.
Well, I know this is outside AFC 2.0, but it seems like the sort of thing that maybe Block Shack do with Eat Up, or at least, maybe point us to someone, or a way to maybe kind of inspire, developers out there to create something along those lines. Community's been very good about getting developers to
And you can do a baby steps, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be your building doesn't have to give you the exact directions to go. Maybe it's a helpful hint of, hey, if you're looking for, go out. If it knows you're intending to go from this line to this line, it doesn't have to be step-by-step directions based on where you are. Just a helpful hint of, hey, it's over next to the McDonald's, or.
Gotta be careful, because McDonald's could be fine.
No, well, that's just gonna. That's why it's an app. You make it so it can constantly update. But you use some kind of simple hint of, yes, you do have to exit the fare gates to go find something. It's upstairs.
Just for reference, the person who started the thread about this 18 months ago and who just posted it, which I was citing earlier, points out that he has reported these sign issues at Park Street to 7 different MBTA employees over the past 18 months, and regarding a handicapped access sign problem, he's informed 2 supervisors and wrote to the MBTA accessibility department, and still nothing's changed.
Well, now it's in the hands of the Rock. We get
Yeah.
stuff done.
And when you visit this link that I'll put to the mailing list, you'll note the photo that he posted, which shows Government Center blanked out, which was correct during the construction, but yet further down the platform there's a sign that tells you to walk this way to get to Arbor Way.
Yes, that's 1985.
Exactly. So there's signs that are out of date since 1985.
There's a bus transfer machine at Back Bay that you used to be able to press to get a free ticket to the 39 bus. And the machine is still there.
So you can still get a ticket.
And if you did, the bus driver would say, what's
All right, where are we? All right, the only other thing that is in my notes from the marketing and operations meeting is Winthrop buses. Basically, the summary there is that they're slowly being assimilated to be more like the rest of the MBTA system. Now they have MBTA branded buses that are basically the same new hybrids that is outside the town. But without an MBTA fare box, there is a possibility of an MBTA fare box. There's also,
I'd say it's a plan.
yes, there's a plan to get MBTA fare boxes, and there's a plan to put up actual bus stop signs at the bus stops, which exist only partially, and
You can call bus stops more of a possibility.
there's a possibility of that, yes, but it would be nice to have, because currently almost none of the bus stops have signs. None of the bus stops have any actual information about what route goes there. So there's one actual MBTA bus stop sign with the space for like the route number. There's just a black rectangle there instead.
Does it have a route number if you go online?
Yeah,
Find
it's
the
like
route
the
number?
7.
So you
Well,
can,
7:13.
so you can take a piece of white paper and start shaping it.
Yeah. Put the sign that says laminated sign. that says-
You and your cardboard company.
You pull this.
Well, but you know, if you were a visitor to Winthrop looking for that, you could walk forever and never find it.
All right, nobody.
Right. Yeah, didn't you also point out that Next Bus doesn't carry the Winthrop lines?
Next bus doesn't carry it, but the MBTA API actually does, so it's in some of the sites, but not others.
Yeah, I mean, it's not being in one of the 2
Yes.
data providers for MBTA route information is, I mean, I don't want to say egregious, but I mean,
so for example, MBTAinfo.com doesn't have it.
Oh.
But if you just go to the MBTA API, my little, not even app example of using the MBTA API does have it.
Hmm.
So strange and inconsistent because it doesn't go through Next Bus.
given what's on the agenda and where we are on the schedule, would anybody object to questions from the audience? Since Barry's raising his hand, I mean, we can wait till the end.
One.
First, thank you very much. A first comment on my part is that the T has eliminated on most bus routes the sign saying where it's going, via what. Like, for example, in 22 and 23, all it says is Ruggles now. And
Interesting.
I always used to say, one would say Talbot Avenue, the other would say Washington Street, or something like that. At Quincy Center Station, I take the 215, it says Ashmont Station. Now, it does not say via West Quincy. We always used to. I almost got on the bus that goes via Walls because I saw Ashmont. And I didn't notice that it said 217. And I don't know what they're saving by doing this.
That's a good question we should ask bus ops.
I remember this was like
Yeah.
a project at some point to eliminate all of those things. I
Right.
feel like in many cases it's helpful because, you know, you have the 71 and 73 and it says via Mount Auburn, which is not 73 via Mount Auburn, which is not actually helpful because it doesn't go via Mount Auburn for its full
Because
length.
sometimes it's
But,
helpful.
and sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's not, and I feel like they
Well,
may
why
have
is
gone
that?
too far.
What if you want to go to Mount Auburn?
Well, then you get on the 73 and you end up on Belmont Avenue, not actually on Mount Auburn Street where you wanted to go.
Oh, so it only is on Mount Auburn for a short time?
Yeah. So, but many of these routes have these like signs, I guess, left over from the roll sign days.
Rob?
Rob has some helpful feedback.
Yeah, so the negative to having a lot of the via terminology in it is in the head sign, when it says via this or via that, is it doesn't fit into one line and it has to scroll, which if you see Ashmont via something, 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 when it scrolls to the something, 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 you don't see Ashmont. And people were voicing, I think, a legitimate concern that they were missing the destination because of all this extra information. So the logic that is in there now is that a via should only be used when there is a variant of a route that goes, or there are two variants of routes that use a different path. So in the example of the 22 and the 23, because there are some variants of the 23 that don't go all the way to Ashmont, but the 22, I don't think there's any other variant that doesn't go to Ashmont. So it will say Ashmont. It won't tell you the route that the via that it takes, because it is the assumption that if you are on a 22, you know the route that you are taking. And there's a trade-off there, without a doubt. But the trade-off is that it says Ashmont Station, and that bus, as it's coming down the street on Blue Hill Avenue, there's a trade-off. You get confused at that moment. It doesn't say to Ashmont, and you don't get on the bus at that moment as it's pulling into your bus stop.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes could actually be misleading the other direction, where the intermediate points are perhaps more important than the destination. One kind of example of that is the 426 on weekends, which goes from Wonderland to Central Square Lynn, but it is by far the slowest way to get from the one to the other. And most people don't ride it to go from Wonderland to Lynn. Most people go to Saugus somewhere in the middle. Unless they are confused and get on this bus where it would have been faster to just wait for one of the other routes and take that and get there faster.
I think that.
No, they'll just say, oh, the T is so slow. It takes like 45 minutes to get from.
The idea when you see a head sign and it says route number and destination is that the route number is telling you what the routing is, and the destination is telling you the direction that you're going, essentially.
There's a consistency there, area of mode in the system.
And we have found a couple examples where we eliminated a via where we should not have eliminated. And if there are examples like that, please send those to me and let me know, and we'll fix those.
I think it makes sense where there are multiple routes between two endpoints that take different routes.
We don't want to do that, though.
Are there really a lot of cases of that happening, though? I feel like there can't be more than like half a dozen.
Probably not. But I think it's just the decision is made is we only use the via when there are variants that choose different paths.
Okay.
All right. This is one of the reasons why it's great to have you here, because we've got the authoritative answer. That's fabulous.
Because I always bring everything back to subway. I think we should start doing via. So. You know, like via Park Street, on the red line. No one's really trying to get the elevator.
I had to leave early before you guys. Was that?
When you left, it was over.
No, there was one topic that I actually tested Arkady to ask, which was about the Silver Line Gateway and
Yes.
what there was that's already planned out for staffing, for headways, that kind of thing. Could you guys summarize that?
Sure. I mean, it is starting in our spring rating, which will be in March 23rd, 20, something around that date. But we have the buses. We have everything is set to go for it. Yeah, it's going.
What are the headways going to be like?
Every 10 minutes.
From beginning of service to end of service, or is it variations depending on peak?
I think.
This is the Chelsea line?
This is the Chelsea line.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of your head, you don't have to give us specific. I mean, or how about this? Could you equate it to another one of the Silver Line routes? Is it comparable to SL?
It's supposed to be comparable to the other Silver Line routes.
Okay, that's great.
As long as the droppers.
Yes.
Yes, that is the factor that could screw up that.
Right. Yeah, that was mentioned. You know, it's
Small things.
You know, Andrew Smith was there, former Brock, he's now working CTPS, so he was there for full time.
He works for the MBTA.
I'm sorry,
Not
MBTA, sorry. So it's playing
Yeah.
MBTA, sorry.
Yeah, under the old business, new business, I'll bring up some of the concerns I have about the Boston proposal for Amazon, but that's for later.
All right, we have nothing else on that. Next on the agenda is reports on external meetings, which I assume means the North-South Rail Link one
And RTAC.
and RTAC. Let's start with RTAC.
Sure. Yeah. So I attended RTAC, and the topic was diversity, you know, and a little bit of a report on the MPO's not draft, but their final report on transit equity. And Betsy Harvey did the presentation, and I forwarded you all the presentation, and you know, good question, Q&A. I followed up on our letter, and the two issues were how do we, you know, get a better universe or a bigger universe of projects, you know, into the LRTP, because the whole point of developing an equity plan or an equity policy is to make sure that you select the project that meets as many of the goals as possible in terms of equity. But if you don't have a good universe, then it's kind of hard to reach more of the public that can be served better by transportation/transit projects. So it's a complex process to get a project into the LRTP, and it's not exactly clear to me, you know, that all municipalities have the knowledge that they need to do that. It could be. I mean, it's easy to take it for granted, you know, that they do, but I think we need to make sure that is the case. And so I was told by Lorenzo, that Jen Rowe is taking on that aspect of reaching out, you know, to municipalities. So that was good. And see if I can remember anything brought up in the letter. It's actually more important. It's not coming to me. Maybe we can start on something else. I'll pull up my notes and come back to it. Sorry about that.
You know, there is another issue that you not only have to follow the process and advocate for your projects, but you also have to do a fair amount within the community before the that's how the community funding starts, right? On projects, you have to do the rights of entry, you have to do the rights of way, you have to do the environmental locally. And now our communities are going to put that on the budget.
Right. Right. I mean, and I guess it's a matter of whether they know that they have to do that, or whether they.
Well, I think they do know because I don't go to the MBO meetings so much anymore, but I went for 10 years religiously, and the MBO does a really good job of contacting the city contacts. I'm pretty confident in that. They know who the contact people are in each of their municipalities, and the municipalities may ignore that, but I'm confident those inquiries go out. And there's an attempt made.
The inquiries go out in terms of soliciting projects, or in
Yeah,
terms of.
on every kind of key checkpoint along the way of the development of plans. I think the field staff is pretty disciplined, but I think it's on the other side. I think the communities have uneven resources, not just financial, but personnel, to follow through.
Well, and so I guess it's really a matter then of whether the communities are left to fend for themselves based on their capabilities, or whether there should be some other mechanism to assist them in doing what they need to do to serve the citizens of the communities. Because if the projects aren't proposed, regardless of whose fault it is, the people that live there are underserved because.
Right, and one of the checks and balances is that the representation on the NPO, which I think mathematically is skewed against the environmental justice population in the core, but there is a pretty good effort to have regional representation across all that NPO, and you can see sub-districts. I think there's, so those people may be more local advocates as opposed to representing their sub-district, but the way the elections work is there's supposed to be reps from each of the sub-districts on the NPO board. And MEPC tries to help too. I mean, they're not as fundamental to the transportation process, but MEPC is a partner in that process.
Right. And RTAC tries to help too, and I think that's why it'll be good for us to be a part of that. They only have one voice.
Yeah, that was always I always thought RTAC had interesting topical meetings, but I found it more efficient to go to the MBO meetings directly and to speak on the topics I wanted to speak on at those meetings, where everybody was there to hear what I was advocating, as opposed to through RTAC.
Right, but RTAC does have a vote.
Not on everything. Not on the transportation conformity documents.
Right, but they do have a vote on something.
On some things, yes.
Which is more than you get just as a person speaking at the meetings. We don't have a vote, so don't argue that. I mean, you can say that you have more impact by speaking, but if you don't have a vote, you don't have a vote.
Well, what happens is RTAC cannot represent very many communities at a time. And so if you want to assure yourself of being represented at the NPO, you've got to go speak for yourself.
Anything else for that?
I've been talking, so I haven't been able to bring it up. I'll just circle back to it after.
Okay. North-South Rail Link.
Want to start?
You can go ahead.
Okay. The meeting was very well attended, and I'd say had every major proponent or stakeholder in the North-South Rail Link project, other than Mike Dukakis himself, who was not there only because he happened to teach a class on Tuesdays, which was the same night that this was held. The presentation was brief and really wasn't outlining anything we didn't already know about the project. The new information, I believe, was simply about what the scope of the current study is and what the timeline is going to be for the present phase, which will go until January, when there'll be the next public meeting. The expectation is that the next public meeting around January will have a more concrete proposal that would be brought forth for discussion. I think, Arkady, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the biggest questions is whether or not to, actually the two biggest questions, excuse me, are 2 tracks versus 4 tracks, and whether or not to have the central station in the center as opposed to just a north station underground and a south station underground. Those are the really big puzzle pieces that need to be, all right, my metaphor just fell apart there. Those are the 2 big questions that need to be answered, is 3 stations or 2, 4 tracks or 2. The Q&A was exceptional and was far more illustrative of the finer points of the project than just the presentation itself.
And who was in charge of the presentation?
Scott Hemway.
Okay.
I believe Scott Hemway is the project manager for it.
Is he the manager?
I believe so. I could be wrong about that. I think that he identified himself as being the project head. That ring a bell, okay?
Because I know when he presented to
yeah.
RTAC, he was, but I thought he was maybe looking for someone to replace him, so that's why I asked.
Okay.
All right, so no, that makes sense.
And is there any cost effectiveness analysis at this point?
I believe that's part of the study. That is within scope.
I think I read it was 720 million. I read it in the newspaper.
And that includes electrifying the whole system?
No.
So that was the other thing, is they had like a bunch of options listed for potential services, and only the like biggest fanciest option involved electrification beyond just the tunnel and its immediate area, which is unfortunate, and I think it's a significant deficiency in their approach to the project. So they did go, Scott Hemway went into some length saying, well, we want to, keep separate things separate and keep this project, sort of isolated and not try to pile everything into it. At the same time, I think the effectiveness of the project is influenced considerably by everything else that would happen in the commuter rail system around it. If we just have the commuter rail service that we have today, but without, that's not really, is that really worth it?
Yeah, people traveling twice as far, it is not going to add much ridership.
Yeah, I think as far as add-ons beyond the scope of the project itself, but necessary add-ons, is the acquisition of dual-mode locomotives. I believe that is assumed that it would happen as a requirement of the tunnel, but not expected to be part of the North-South Rail Link funding. That would be an acquisition that MassDOT and MBTA would have to do to acquire new rolling stock, but just for locomotives.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's,
But that has,
They also
that's
have
a mental mass loss. That's it.
right, but they pretty much ruled out, no, not pretty much, they have ruled out any other rolling stock acquisitions other than dual mode locomotives.
Yeah.
which again is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. But I think, in my mind, understandable. I mean, the capital costs to acquire dual mode DMUs or multi-mode MUs, new coaches, etc., or electrify.
Capital costs of replacing the existing fleet of obsolete locomotives and all the MBB cars, etc., with an MU fleet plus electrification, is that really going to be that much more expensive than just replacing them with slow diesel locomotives? Or extremely expensive dual mode locomotives? Which they exist, They actually exist now. They're used in Montreal. They're used in New Jersey, but they're also considerably more expensive than regular diesels or regular locomotives.
You said slow. That comparable to all electric or comparable to the
So
current all
apparently
diesels?
The key factor, and this is based on some studies that I read about elsewhere. The key factor is actually not diesel versus electric. It's what proportion of the train's weight is on powered axles.
Mm-hmm.
So the regular locomotive, whether it's diesel or electric, you have one big heavy thing, but then the whole weight of the rest of the train, and it has to rely on just its own weight to kind of generate the friction to pull the train,
yep.
versus having every wheel powered.
Okay.
It's like four-wheel drive.
Gotcha. Okay, but presumably the dual mode locomotives would be just as fast as the current MPI HSB 46s, right?
Yes.
Presumably. Okay.
Somebody's going to stop outside the town and make sure the cat and everything.
Well, apparently it happens on the fly. Apparently the ones that are already being used in other places switch on the fly. So you're running along on diesel and you get under the catenary and the pantograph goes up, the diesel shuts off, and it just keeps on moving without a blip.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what I was.
Yep.
I never missed an opportunity to live so I'm right there. Wouldn't be a good meeting if I did.
Well, it would seem deceptive to not include those costs.
Well, I think they're including the cost. It's just a matter of which bucket it is. In other words, I think the north-south railing, again, correct me if I'm wrong because you were there, Arkady, the bucket for the north-south railing project is just the tunnel and the stations. I think am I wrong? Or is that bucket of the whole project including the locomotives? I didn't think it was.
It should.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
Okay, we can look into that.
So I won't re-articulate mine, I won't rehash my perspective of this whole thing. What I think is remarkable on this is that they're cutting the scope in advance of even funding issues. And traditionally, how it goes is like if you look at the Green Line extension, for example, it's going all the way to here. We're going to have a state-of-the-art station, all these great, fantastic stations. And all of a sudden, the cost balloon, and you have to cut things away. Even before we get to that point where we say the $1 billion project, the $1 billion South Lake Tunnel is actually a $5 billion project, that's how the costs just balloon around here. They're already cutting the middle. It sounds like they're already the ability to cut the middle station and cut from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes. You reach a point where there's not that much else you can cut. You're already using your 2 release. So all of a sudden that $1 billion project turns into the $2 billion project. When you do stop the tunnel halfway through, I mean, go down to 1 lane, you run out of using your relief valve already.
I could actually talk about some of that under a later topic heading. It's not outside the scope of the meeting that we attended a week ago Tuesday. There's some more points that I can talk about, but as far as summarizing the meeting last week, that's pretty much it, right? Oh, I said hi to Brad Bellows in person. We had Brad Bellows on the phone at the marketing operations subcommittee, and I also introduced Arkady to Brad. And his parting words to us were, "Please keep in touch. Please let's keep a close relationship."
Yeah, I'm not so sure about the effective cost of this above or something in any case, but he's a terrific guy. Really terrific.
Well, it's also one of the projects for Amazon. So,
I was going to bring that up under the new business section. Exactly.
Well, I can give you another point on the RTAC, and that was one point we had made was about the inability for them to do an equity analysis on the T's capital plans past the first year, because they didn't have good insights into what the T's plan was spending in years years 2 through 4, and the CIP. And Renzo, once again, said that he understood the problem and that they were going to improve that process because they were going to be getting more input from, I think, asset management, and there was going to be a presentation by MBTA from asset management people how they were going to better inform the CIP process so that there was better insight as to what was going to be done in years 2 through 4, the CIP, and so on. So it looks like they are making some progress on that, so that when it comes to doing equity analysis, they'll have a better sense of what the team is going to do. That's it.
Next, I believe, is business new business.
I think under old is just what we already mentioned about the Silver Line. I was going to update you guys on the construction progress, but I mean, knowing that it's going to open in for the spring rating, I think that obviates the need to talk about the infrastructure, other than to say it's very impressive. If you guys ever have any reason to take the Newburyport or Rockport train during daylight hours, make sure you sit on the south-facing side of the train so you can look out and see it as you go by through Chelsea.
Well, why don't we kind of, we're never getting a field trip, what's the kind of field trip for the rating, until we at least get a ride on the Silver One, or I'll take it on myself.
Absolutely. Once it opens, oh yeah.
If it runs every 10 minutes, it's not, we can run up there and
Yep.
take half an hour and then back.
I
Oh,
guess
maybe
the-
eat at a restaurant in Chelsea somewhere.
Sure.
The brown jug.
Go to market basket.
Oh, market.
The mullahs.
Yes.
And other old business is the last day of interviews, this Thursday, and it'll start at 5:30 instead of 5 because Bradley Putnam has taken a job at CTPS. I'm sure CTPS this time is not MBTA. So are they doing? So anyways, and so.
One piece of new business is I'd like to discuss the streaming of the meetings and the retention policy for those streams after the meeting. So I believe when we discussed streaming, we said that we would not keep the stream up after the fact. But as of right now, I think they're just being uploaded to YouTube. They're not, I think, publicly listed, but they're still on there.
I think they are.
Okay, or they are publicly listed.
Yep.
We can change that.
Yep.
So,
Switch. Yeah.
so I'd just like to get an idea of whether we want to just keep them up on YouTube as a public resource, or whether we want to delete them after the meeting or after some period of time, or what.
Personally, I'm in favor of keeping them up online indefinitely as a matter of public record for a public meeting. I don't see any reason to delete them or not have them up for a period of time or indefinitely after the meeting. I'd like to see them up online indefinitely.
I agree.
I'm going to disagree. We're relitigating what we had already decided 2 years ago that we've gone against what we decided. What we decided at the time was that we were going to stream them and then leave them online for a week or two or a month or so. It may be doing 48 hours, somebody can view them. From my, obviously it's a committee, so we can make a decision as a committee, but from my personal perspective, I obviously speak my mind. I like to joke and speak my mind as a committee. I don't necessarily want a permanent record of that on the web for all eternity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have to censor myself.
And then not only that, well, I actually would change my mind now, and you won't get caught, or I won't get caught saying one thing at this meeting and changing my mind, and next year, then they'll come back to me. But you said that a year ago,
think-
you know, look what's happened. I won't say 4
It probably doesn't matter either way.
Yeah,
The minutes are already online.
yeah, but they're very.
The minutes are different than, yeah, they're not verbatim minutes.
Right.
They're not capturing, Craig made a
Well,
I
joke about soap like that. It just,
I support doing it, especially because we, have, urged the FMCB, to make their meetings more transparent. They went beyond what I had wanted them to do. I wanted them to
right,
do
they're
something.
very formalized. It's a different, if that's what you want to do,
If I can finish, I would
committee,
appreciate it.
They're all
Okay,
vague.
so I just, please let me finish my thought, so they went beyond what I was hoping that they would do, and they are streaming, and they are retaining them. I'm not sure how long they are retaining them, and it's like, if having them publicly available elevates the level of discourse, I'm all in favor of that. And yes, maybe it will make us more consistent. I don't think it has to curtail the joking and kidding. I'm going to do that. It might curtail some unpleasant outbursts. I'm very much in favor of that. And transparency. I mean, we always, I think most individuals want more transparency out of their government entities. And we are a quasi-state one, so I just feel inconsistent, asking for that from other entities and not being willing to do that.
I think it's already been detrimental to us. I think when we had head of railway operations, who was it we had that?
Ryan Caholen.
When he saw the camera, he flipped over to sales mode. We didn't get the unvarnished. We got the, let me show you how smart I am, and let me tell you how great, all the great things we're doing. It was no longer an honest back and forth conversation. It was you could see him look at the camera and go, okay, I have put my public meeting face on and do my public, and do mine. So I think we got a different kind of conversation.
Less conjecture on your part.
Yeah.
And also, we always make it clear to folks that these public meetings are more formal and or administrative. And when we want to have a less formal meeting, we bring people into the subcommittee meetings where we do get the more frank conversation and off-the-record conversation. So I think that distinction, isn't as great as you proposed or stipulated now. And also with respect to litigation, well, that just happens in groups. You take a position and later on you revisit it. We may indeed revisit it again once we have 12 more members.
I personally didn't get a vibe that Ryan had changed into a public mode. I got the impression that he's always that way when he's talking about things that are designed for public consumption, whether it's on camera or not. But if we should have special guests only at the subcommittees, I'd support that. I mean, if we don't want to run the risk of having them be guarded, then we should have special guests only at subcommittees.
Well, I don't think we need to go that far. I mean, we have special guests in subcommittee meetings when we want to have those kind of conversations. And we can have the same one at this kind of meeting. We don't have to say we're only going to have guests at subcommittee meetings. Because there are times when people want to have a presentation to the public that is their position, and it is a guarded position. But there's still information there, still value there.
And putting it online does spread that information to the general public more, which personally I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
One actual question about this though, does anyone have any idea whether anyone actually watches the?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
I can tell you.
Okay.
The number of views, well, right now there's 2 people watching as we speak.
But the live stream is different than the.
Yep. I'm going to pull up the views. It's going to be about 20 seconds. In the previous 3 weeks, there have been 16 views of the October meeting, and since the September meeting, 16 views of the September meeting, And even though it was audio only because I could get the camera to work, there were 24 views of the August meeting.
But once again, I mean, you have to like do the analytics of those to see just how much of the meeting was viewed. So
Yep.
without seeing the graph to see what percentage of the meeting was watched, I mean, a view is a view, but it could be a view of 2 minutes of it or even 30 seconds of it. I mean, you have to really look at it to see how much is being.
Right.
Agreed.
It's a number that's not zero, but also not particularly high.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
But at early exposure, I think you shouldn't really take home from that, you know, that there won't be much viewership because if people aren't looking for it, because they're not expecting to be there, you know, then of course
Right.
it must be low.
Right.
As it becomes more known, you know, that it's there, then you can make the argument that the views will go up. And so I just.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out because I just remembered I have forgotten to mention on railroad.net, just sort of in passing, that Ryan Caholen last month was our special guest and talked about a number of things that would interest people who frequent that discussion site. I have every expectation that once I do that, which I was planning on doing, saying, oh, by the way, the Rider Oversight Committee had the director of railroad operations on. I wasn't going to identify myself as, I mean, everybody probably knows that I'm a member of the ROC when I'm posting on railroad.net. It's not a hard connection to make, but I was simply going to say, by the way, Ryan was at the meeting. In 4 weeks, I'll let you know what the view count goes to for the September meeting. And as far as your point about minutes that we have traditionally had not being like verbatim, word for word, I think it's inevitable that at some point the minutes are going to be electronically transcribed. Like, Kyle is going to just take the recorder that he makes and just feed it into an online service, and it would be word for word. So I don't think we should rely on.
Cross that bridge when we came to it, but-
Yep. Yeah, I think it's worth having it recorded and keeping it in posterity for public outreach, and it may be instill some excitement in the community of what we do. And I'm only being slightly sarcastic. I only mean that ever so slightly sarcastic.
Well, maybe someday we'll have an interstar version of I'm not so sure how important these are to the world.
It can be crunched,
Doesn't-
doing that before they watch it. Whatever that game is that you like.
Well, I mean, it's not. I hear you. I'm not doing it for publicity purposes. I'm just supporting
Likewise.
it for transparency purposes, so that if someone does want to know what happened, they have the ability to do that. I know it does constrain things, but that is the price of transparency. I want it from other entities, and so I can't be, I just can't, I don't want to use a loaded term. I just want to do the same that I'm asking other people to do.
Well, I'll change that.
All right, well, the other problem is that as of right now, the videos are publicly listed and haven't been deleted after whatever hours we agreed on.
I didn't remember that there was a certain amount that was agreed.
Which is
but
why we're discussing this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we just became aware of this when we were doing interviews.
So is this something that we anticipate might change when the committee gets larger and discusses it again?
Yeah, I think that's maybe a reasonable discussion to have with the larger committee. I think the other question is, should we keep the videos that we already have, like the September video that's been up for a month? Should we keep it up and see if railroad.net cares? Or should we start actually enforcing the policy that we agreed on? 48 hours or whatever it was.
Well, how's this for an alternative. I mean, that is that you keep it out there, you don't make it publicly available, you make it unlisted, and you give the link to anyone that asks, unless in some cases you want to promote it. So let's say the person who wants to promote it can come to the group and ask permission for doing so.
Or as an alternative, we can just extend the retention period to 2 months, and then it's still not a permanent record. We can still promote it, say, here's this recent thing. I feel like a lot of what gets said in these meetings is interesting because it's fresh news,
Right.
so the value drops considerably, and then you don't have the issue of the permanent record, or I said this thing last year that I don't agree with anymore.
Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, so it could be like 60, 90 days or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a difference between what might have been formally agreed to in the past and the ability to rethink it. So I'm comfortable with whatever people decide. But in general, I think if you set a formal policy, you should probably follow it.
Yeah, and the problem is that we haven't. As it turns out, partly because of change of personnel, change of platform, I think.
Right. I mean, so yeah, I mean, it wasn't that Stefan blatantly went against the will of the group. I think you just didn't remember, right?
I wasn't sure if it was formalized,
Oh, okay. All right.
and I didn't remember.
Okay.
I didn't remember if it was formalized, and I didn't remember what it was.
Yeah. So where does that leave us?
So I think we should formalize, if we can agree on this, formalize a retention period of 90 days.
Yeah, I'm with you, because I think we can look at most of you. You're good with that.
I'm good with a 90-day period, and then if we want to revisit, a permanent record, I can get around. Based on we had an agreement. I think it was a shorter time frame. I'm comfortable going with the 90-day, and then if we do want to make a permanent record, if somebody wants to bring that to a vote, from that point forward, I might be able to get behind that. I have to think through. I could be convinced. I will keep it open-minded.
Let's do it.
We'll revisit the permanent record at some point next year once we have more members.
And to be fair, it's going to change when more people come.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be the nature of it. We're a technical group now. Been doing this a while. It's going to change. It would be a good opportunity to say, maybe it is the right opportunity to say we're going to be a lot more formal. I'm also going to propose that nobody wears shorts to meetings because I think that's respect.
An interesting suggestion was brought up that if we have slide decks or presentation materials given to us by people who present, for instance, if Keolis comes and gives us a presentation ever again, sorry, just joking. If Keolis comes and gives us a presentation and they provide us with the electronic form of that presentation, perhaps we can keep that online and available on our website indefinitely, since that's a material provided from somebody else.
Sure.
Okay.
That would be interesting.
All right.
And the written minutes on our website will continue to be indefinitely available as they have been, right? Okay.
All right. I'd like to actually formally vote on this 90-day retention period. So, motion for a 90-day retention period for our videos.
I make a motion to retain our videos on YouTube and for 90 days.
For 90 days ago.
And then after 90 days, they are delisted publicly or
After 90
removed
days,
entirely?
Their status is changed to private, which means they're unviewable.
Okay, but not to delete them after 90 days. Make them unviewable without the link.
Private unviewable videos.
Sure.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed?
Still okay, but
The motion passes.
consistently.
Okay.
All right, that will be our retention policy going forward. I think, Stefan, feel free to publicize it to railroad.net. See
Yep.
if we get any interest. I'm all for transparency, but it's no permanent record argument.
Yep.
All right, any other new business, old business?
You want to talk about Amazon?
Amazon, yes.
Oh, sorry, I was just reading a text from James who said that he votes for permanent retention, but he'll settle for 90 days.
Wow.
Because James is watching the video.
He's on, is Brad on also?
So he's one of the two.
I don't have any indication that Brad's with us.
Okay.
Well, he might have a huge audience.
Yes.
Thanks, James, and thanks for watching.
So if people watch this in shorts? If they're watching, they're rock members and they're watching, can they watch in shorts?
Craig?
Or that,
And they watch in shorts. That's funny.
So Stefan, what do you think?
Yep. Okay. In brief, to summarize what I sent you guys, which might have been too lengthy of a discussion for you to digest, which is fine. The proposal for Amazon in the Boston area seems to hinge on Suffolk Downs, which has 2 stations somewhat bordering the east side of the property, but other than Route 1A on the west side of the property, no real other access. My idea was to put forth a Silver Line branch extension that would serve the west side of the Suffolk Downs property, because from the airport to the Silver Line Gateway extension, which is already, well, not being built, it's almost completed. The Chelsea Bridge, the Chelsea River, Chelsea Creek Bridge, which is about at Curtis Street, is where the former railroad right-of-way still exists north of that, or northeast. My idea was to suggest, or my idea was to recommend that for the Amazon proposal, instead of a ferry to try to bring people from that west side of the Suffolk Downs property by river underneath the drawbridge, which would have to be opened and interrupting the Silver Line more, instead of that ferry, which would supposedly dock at North Station, but, well, they said it would go to North Station. But then when I looked online at Google satellite views, you really can't get a ferry underneath the North Washington Street Bridge unless they rebuild that spin bridge to start spinning again. So you really can't get...
You can get a small ferry.
Yeah, but I was thinking, is a small ferry what they really want to advertise to Amazon? Because they want to be able to say to Amazon, we're going to serve this area well. So anyway, long story short, my theory was, since you're going to have the Silver Line Gateway to Chelsea already going up to Curtis Street, and I suggest you guys look at like Google Maps, whatever, making a northeast branch to go continue up that same railroad right-of-way to just about shy of Railroad Ave, you could then hook off and reach the Suffolk Downs property with the Silver Line branch. The only real problem would be crossing 1A, but there's been a long-term plan to remediate the traffic congestion on 1A near Boardman Street, which if you've ever come in to town from the north, the Boardman Street area is an absolute disaster starting 6:30 in the morning, going right till 9 o'clock. It's one traffic light that serves Route 145 that goes off into Winthrop. Nightmare. They've been talking about elevating that and doing essentially a highway grade separation at Boardman Street for a long time. That would also allow the Silver Line to hook in from the old railroad right-of-way, which is unencumbered, and then actually get into the Suffolk Downs property. That way you'd have a quasi-rapid transit on both the far east side, the Suffolk Downs and Rats. Is it Wood Island, the next one north of Suffolk Downs? Anyway, the 2 Blue Line stations that already exist on the Beachmont. Thank you. Yeah.
You're deep in your knowledge base if you know Beachmont.
Yeah. So Beachmont and Suffolk Down Station to serve the east side, and then this Silver Line branch that I'm suggesting to serve the west side, as opposed to the ferry idea, which is on the Boston proposal. But, oh, and then Arkady wrote up something talking about Suffolk Downs in more depth.
I wrote up a thing talking about Suffolk Downs in more depth. It's on the mailing list, but basically my summary of the transportation context of Suffolk Downs is that it's very poorly linked to the rest of the region, by road especially, since there's no limited access highway there. The only highway is 1A, which is not particularly wide, requires going through downtown to go to anywhere west or south. In the other direction, requires going through a lot of traffic lights to go anywhere to the north. And you know, the blue line is there, but the blue line is also very poorly connected to anything that's not downtown, in particular the commuter rail. This is one of the things that makes it very different from Assembly Square, which is right on 93. And right on the Orange Line as well, which is better connected to the region, has a lot of buses nearby, etc. So, my personal opinion is that this whole Suffolk Downs proposal as a major office center is actually a terrible idea. And not likely to fly.
So your recommendation is you recommend the lines and then completely redoing the Celebrated Circle?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny that you say that because in order to use Widett Circle, you'd pretty much have to have the north-south rail link to be able to free up that space.
Well, no, you just kick out all the food poles there.
Oh, and that's right. And then you could build it on air rights above the tracks. Yeah, I forgot about that part. Right.
I have a little bit of opinion on this. I think, first off, the Widett Circle might be best as a stacked multimodal facility for freight. You know, it's very centrally located for a lot of railroads and railroads, and it's a rural place for housing. It's one of the most polluted states in 17 But secondly, I think the reality of the intellectual map here is if you don't have a direct connection to Kendall Square, then you're probably not going to attract a global competitor. And you know, I think people just keep overlooking that, but Kendall Square is going to be pretty fully thought by MIT's local center development. It's pretty fully thought right now. And if you think back to when Murray was lieutenant governor and really representing the interests of Worcester, the only thing he cared about was the Kendall Square connection. He tried twice to get the commuter rail to cross over North Station, but the only reason for that was to connect Worcester directly to Kendall Square. And the same thing is true of Boston Properties. All they care about at North Station is getting to Kendall Square on a crossover. And I think from a research economy point of view, if you don't connect MIT at the center of Harvard, there's a long-term problem here. And that's the same thing. That's basically the connection to Kendall Square. So, you know, the urban ring right away could go right to Lynn, but Lynn is not as smart strategically as Worcester was about wanting that direct connection to Kendall Square. You can get from BU across the Charles to Kendall Square, around to the North Shore, and then up wherever you want to go. To back integrate that urban ring connection to Longwood is harder, but you can get it. It's right at Alston, so it's right at the center of the future Harvard research facilities. Eventually, you would like to backtrack to get it to both Longwood Medical and UMass Boston. You would like them to be part of that research consortium. And I think you also would have liked originally to have had enough width in the through Harvard Tunnel to get an actual rail connection, an electric rail connection. In my view, it was incredibly stupid and short-sighted to have to use the dual silver line and to not allow that. You know, the brilliance of the original urban ring is hard to overcome. I know Karen has some different ideas about that, but it really did hook in all the environmental justice communities and the research economy. In my mind, there is no question where the center of our economy is. It's Kendall Square. And Longwood is the second most important part of our economy. The three key areas of Boston are all third. So whether you're looking at Back Bay, or you're looking at downtown, or you're looking at Seaport, they're all third. They're nowhere close to Kendall Square in importance for the intellectual drivers of the economy. And I view Suffolk as the same decision as was made on the convention center. Boston just did not want another city close to the convention center. The developers in South Boston did not want it, because when it's full, it takes up an awful lot of the road capacity, and the capacity in the Seaport, which is constrained. People knew that the road capacity and the Silver Line were not going to offer enough long-term capacity. What they really needed was to divert the red line through South Boston. Right? It's in the 4-point channel. They should have brought it along the Seaport and then up to connect with the other stations on the red line. That would have been the thing that would allow you to go however dense you wanted in the Seaport. But they didn't do it. They were embarrassed about the big overrun. Most people did not ask for anything more than the Silver Line money. And then the Third Harbor Tunnel, which was incredibly cost effective, did not leave room for single technology transit system. So I think if we don't think more about urban ring or connecting Kendall, and then also bringing in all the gateway cities for their housing affordability and their need to connect to the core economy, that we're missing the boat. That's just my personal opinion.
Except, Amazon is looking at other places, and I don't think, even, I'm not in narrow Suffolk Downs, but I can see anything that looks as attractive.
Boston is a perfect choice for Amazon. It's the opposite coast.
Yes.
It has great air connections now.
Right.
They don't all need air every day, but Amazon needs air.
Yeah.
It's direct to Europe. Boston is a perfect place, but not connecting to the intellectual core of the economy.
Well,
just kills
look
the
at where they
I
have
think
their
Amazon
existing
does,
office.
Yeah.
when they negotiate, if they decide on Boston, they won't decide on coming to Boston, and you said Suffolk Downs, oh, we will go to Suffolk Downs. You're not stupid.
No, I agree with that. And there's 326 Amazon proposals right now. Katie, you were going to refer to Seattle, and they basically have a lot of constraint because the water isn't everywhere in
Well,
Seattle.
no, I mean their existing office in Cambridge. They have an office.
I know, but it's tiny. But they're looking for 8 million square feet. Yes.
Here's an idea for like a time frame, and I'm just wondering what would you think of this as far as meeting the needs of the research economy? If I'm not mistaken, changing one switch just outside of North Station would allow trains to actually come in from Framingham, Worcester.
They are already rebuilding that switch as part of GLX.
Exactly. So I was going to say, if that actually when that actually happens, you would actually be able to run a train without doing crazy reverse moves from Worcester, Framingham, cross the river to North Station. If we wanted to pour some, put down some non-ADA compliant platforms, which I know you can't really do, but I'm just saying, if Amazon said, we'll come to Boston if you do two things, allow people to get from Worcester to Kendall and get people from Kendall to Suffolk Downs, the rail part of that, the commuter rail part, could be done in a flash. Red-blue connector, okay, assuming that took a year, what do you think of that? Are those two things enough to meet?
It provides the central connectivity to the gateway cities and the research economy that the original urban renewal does. That, and people forget, that was 250 passengers a day. Right now, the little tiny green line extension in Somerville is going to equal the whole southern commuter rail. That's how ineffective our commuter rail is right now compared to our urban core transit. And the north side is tiny compared to the south side. So, there's just a huge difference, and that's one reason I brought up cost effectiveness. I buy Brad Bellows' suggestion that if we had all EMUs and we could send them out really rapidly, and we had an electrified system on the rail system, it could be transformative. But nothing has so underperformed in the last 30 years as our commuter rail investments. You know, we have hit, like Greenbush, what, it never hit half of predicted capacity. And on the other hand, our urban core, like they opened Davis Square, was 2-3 times the prediction, almost immediately. So if we're going to really rely on an upgraded rail system, we better go something like Sydney or Europe or, you know, all electric and really buy in. But we better do those passenger volume calculations carefully, because our commuter rail system is very expensive right now. It carries very few passengers, and extending it through the core without changing the technology is not going to double the effectiveness of that system.
But do you think is it the fact that it's not an EMU that's the issue with Greenbush? I don't think it's the technology that's the issue with Greenbush, right?
No, I don't think it's the technology. I think if you want to go to a single transformative technology, that's one thing. You might have a shot at really upping the use of the commuter rail and hooking things in better. But I also think if you don't hook in Kendall Square broadly, not a one-off to North Station or a one-off to Worcester, but broadly,
Right.
then I think we've got a problem there, because the research universities are the core of our economy.
Right. Yeah, I was
It's
just
not the thing.
I was only thinking of, you know, Worcester Framingham to North Station and then blue to red connector as something that is feasible in my mind. Like if we actually said we're going to do this, and we're going to do this in 12 to 18 months, it could actually be done. North-South Rail Link, that's, I mean, even if we said, yeah, here's the money, it would take a decade. Even without Central Station, even without
You know what?
4
Even
tracks,
for
right?
20 years, if you went all in on it, and it was going to be all electrified, you say, okay, you know, we're going to rotate around so we don't have a big $15 billion overrun. That's okay with me as a long-term vision. I don't actually like all these little compromises. You've got all these technologies.
Yeah, I'm not.
Can't support them.
Yeah, I'm not saying compromise. I'm saying what can we do today, now, and 6 months, 12 months.
That's how we got in all these ineffective things. You know, that's how we got a Third Harbor Tunnel with no transit in it that's really effective. That's how we got the Silver Line that you hate. Jeez, what are we doing? You know, we're trying to save money.
Prioritizing cars above everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful discussion, but we're almost out of time.
Sorry.
I would like to have a public comment period for
Yeah.
our very patient members of the public.
Yes, sure.
So,
Thanks. I'm Carl Seglin, live in Brighton. A few quick things. First, thank you guys for live streaming and for making it available a bit past the time of the meetings. I'd also like to ask you at the marketing and operations meetings to spend time with the background bus operations. So for particular topics, if you need topics to ask about, in my experience, seeing leaving Kenmore off-peak 257s, bumper to bumper, leaving Harvard Station 277s, leaving bumper to bumper off-peak on a Saturday night. Like, I don't understand why in 2017 that happens, and then also seeing longer than planned headways on the same routes. Trips just not showing up at times. I use 64, and that doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Full vehicles passing and not picking people up. I don't know even whether that makes it into the reliability figures. I don't know whether the T estimates that, but I see that most weeks on 57 passing people by because the vehicles are too full, and at times where the next scheduled bus is 15 minutes later. So that, and lastly, service suspensions. So there was a special event on an off-peak time. No service was running about 12 or 15 stops, so quite a distance. There's no information at any of the stops at any time before during the outage, and the information on the T's website, with the service alert, gave conflicting information about which stops were affected, and neither was correct based on my seeing bus pass.
Could you tell me what bus number that was?
That was the 57.
Was that a Charles?
No, it was a neighborhood, square road, 5K road, it's not Sunday. But for something scheduled in advance, to have no information at the station and the online information be conflicting and incorrect, it's upsetting. Fortunately, I had ways to deal with this, so I wasn't terribly caught up, but I saw people that at least a dozen people want to stop and pass by. Yeah, so that's it. Really encourage you to, at the operations meetings, to
Thank you, we will look into
try to find out about
I
stuff
will
like
tell
that.
you, the last happening, I was very similar to not the same clusters, but in different neighborhoods, but,
Yeah, and I had my experience, but I'm confident that
yes.
probably.
Sure.
Barry Steinberg, Association for Public Transportation. I have a comment and a few news items. The comment, at many T stations, there are community maps showing all bus routes connecting with the station. And oftentimes these maps may be as much as 15 years old and obsolete because they've changed routes going in there several times. For example, Ashland Station has a map showing the Walls to Beach bus going into the Walls to Beach, and that hasn't been done for probably 10 years. That's item one. Now some news items. On the 16th and 17th of November, there's going to be a symposium on the future of mobility. This is going to be at Columbia University, and there's a link to the event, http://geography2050.org/.
Are you going there?
No. But in
Is that-
case anyone is interested.
Barry, just to recap, is that geography2050.org? Is that what it is?
Correct.
Okay. Geography2050.org.
From the Boston Street Railway Association, the latest issue of their roll sign, that's the name of the publication. The false date is July-August 2017. Has a number of interesting articles. They also include a flyer to the Amherst Railway Society Railroad Hobby Show, which is the 27th and 28th of January at the Eastern State Art Exposition Center. Also, they included their publications list, and their website is
Can we go?
Yeah,
well,
if you could continue.
bsra.org. That's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Barry.
All right, I think we're done with our agenda, so motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All right.
Second?
Adjourn.
Adjourned. Thank you, everybody.